In exactly a year from now, the Paris Olympics will be over, but the Paralympics will have only just begun. Hosting the Olympics is one thing, but the Paralympics is a whole other challenge. From accessibility to the sports themselves, there are many differences, but the emotions on the tracks, pitches or in the swimming pools remain exactly the same. And there's a lot to talk about with a year to go. And I'm very pleased to welcome here in the studio Paralympic champion Michael Jeremias with us here tonight, as well as the head of planning and coordination for Paris 2024, Lambis Konstantinidis. Good evening to both of you. We're going to have a lot to talk about. Michael, I'm going to turn to you first. To you, we're a year ahead before the Paralympics take place in your home country. How does that feel tonight?
Well, good evening. It feels very, very exciting. I've been working on this project for 7 years now. Actually, yes, 7 years. When we got the games, that was in Lima in 2017. The challenge from the beginning was, of course, to organize some amazing games, like some impactful and useful games, Olympics and Paralympics. Now it's our turn. We celebrated the 1 year to go Olympics 3 weeks ago. Now it's the Paralympic day for that. And we're very close. We're getting closer and closer to deliver what we promised as an organizing committee, not just in terms of accessibility, but just in terms of celebration, in terms of emotions, of recognition of those amazing athletes. And I'm proud. I'm proud to work on this project as a chef de mission. It's so exciting, but we know all the things left to do as well. Mm-hmm. I mean, 1 year is a lot when you work in such big organization. So we work hard every day to deliver, hopefully, the best games ever.
But it'll quickly feel, I'm sure, very, very short at some points. Dealing with the coordination of the Paralympics, how are these things going on your side for Paris 2024 so far?
Well, we're trying to make every day count. As you just said, Michael, the time we have is never enough, and we want to make every day count. And that means making sure that the athletes get the level of service they need, making sure that the accessibility at our venues is what it should be, making sure that we can educate the public about sport, which is different, which they're not used to, and also making sure that we have a whole ecosystem behind us, whether it is our sponsors, the ones that are helping us put this together, our public delivery partners, which are helping us through the infrastructure they're putting in place, and in general, a whole group of volunteers, which we have just started recruiting and which will be critical in delivering the Paralympic Games. So it's extremely exciting, but there's still plenty to do in the next 364 days that are left.
Exactly. Well, let's just take a little minute, because earlier on today we spoke to the president of the International Paralympics Committee. That's Andrew Parsons, and we asked him about some of those challenges around the planning of the Games. And of course, what's crucial to any Olympic and Paralympic Games is the long-lasting effects that they aim to deliver. Paris isn't necessarily seen as the most disability-friendly city. Probably lots of people watching us now would have had an experience coming here and been, this is not what they would expect from such a big city. How can the Paralympics change that?
Well, I think we have been changing that for the last 6 years, and we see, for example, a huge investment coming from the city government and the national government when it comes to accessibility of public spaces, of bus stops here in Paris, of the taxi system. So we understand a little bit of concern about the metro system in Paris not being made accessible due to the legislation here in Paris. But there's a huge investment being made on the on-the-ground system to make it more accessible. And at a national level, there's 1.5 billion euros being invested in making public spaces more accessible. So it's something that is not going to finish with the closing ceremony of the Games, but it's something that will keep on and on and on. So keeping the legacy of life.
Yeah, legacy, obviously, it's something that's very important to you. We'll speak about that in just a bit. I want to ask you, is there an edition of the Paralympics that you look up to and that you think maybe we can do the same, maybe we can surpass it?
Well, I think London is still the benchmark for the Paralympic Games in terms of the promotion, in terms of, let's say, the relevance of those games and how the games really change the life of persons with disability in Great Britain. So, yeah, there are some things that we can implement here, especially when it comes to the promotion of the Paralympics. We are a few weeks from the launch of the ticket sales, and we would like to see all the tickets being sold, the 2.8 million tickets to be sold. They are very affordable, they are special packages, so I think this is what we would like to, if there is something that we would like to see copied from London edition to this edition, will be the participation of the public.
You've seen the Olympics and the Paralympics in your hometown, Rio, before. What's the long-standing change there? What's the effect been from the Paralympics? What's the legacy been like? What's it like for people with disabilities now? Is there a difference compared to before? Can you see that?
Yes, first of all, a change in terms of changing legislation. So in the lead up to the Games in 2015, there was a law that was approved in Brazil, changing the lives of persons with disability when it comes to employment, housing, social security, sport education, and so on. It's a huge bill of law. And that being implemented with the Games as a catalyst was fundamental to change the life of persons with disability in Brazil. And again, it's a country with 25 million persons with disabilities. So it had a huge effect on Brazil. And Paralympic sport was something that was already relevant even before the Rio 2016 Games. So it's how you build, let's say, this process in the lead up to the Games. You cannot only wait for the Games to happen, because only 10 days of sport is not enough, but it's the whole 7-year journey to it.
Andrew Parsons, the head of the IPC, speaking there and explaining what it's all about. Michael, you've made this long-lasting change, your life battle. But what is it what's the hardest thing about creating and getting that change in France?
Well, we have a big work to do to change people's minds. We come from a country where disability has never been like a priority. If you look at the last 4 presidents, when they used to be president for 5 years or for 7 years, they were saying that disability was a priority. That used to be a priority of their mandate. At the end of the day, we've never been able to deal with it. We know that in terms of accessibility, it will take like a century to make the society fully accessible for any individual. We know that, and it will cost hundreds of billions of euros, much more than the 1.5 billion which is provided lately. We know about that. The idea of organizing the Games and the Paralympic Games, it use it as a process to just speed, this really long journey, to make it much faster, to make sure that, because that's just an opportunity for me. Getting involved in Paralympics is an amazing opportunity to just see the bigger picture, not just the 4,400 athletes that are going to be treated like kings and queens. We're just going to, with the organization committee, we're going to make sure they can evolve in the best condition as possible to perform and to be celebrated. That will work, that for sure. And today I can guarantee that, even if I'm not personally responsible of it, I'm very confident of it. And after participating to 4 Paralympics, but it's about how we're going to change people's minds. Are we going to suddenly put our finger in the direction of what's not working, how to improve it, how to make sure that we have access, as Andrew was saying, to social service, to culture, to sport, how we change the way we teach kids, education, diversity, all this combined, that's the use of the Paralympics. And I'm confident, and he was talking about accessibility in his interview about the complexity of Paris being a very old city and particularly inaccessible. In 1 year, Paris won't be accessible to everybody, that's for sure. You won't be able to go anywhere you want, anytime you want. We know about that. But the idea, with good sense, with common sense, not good sense, sorry, I'm sorry my English, with common sense, there's so many things you can improve. We had a big meeting today with the Ministry of Sports, with the Ministry of Disability, the Ministry of Transport, with the President of the Airports of Paris, of SNCF, like the train transport, of subway, all the people involved and in charge of transports in France. And when we have the discussions, we have 1 year, and I agree with Lambis, 1 year is a long time to be able to change things, to make sure those people do their job and provide innovations, provide ways to make sure that the way we welcome any tourist with a disability during Olympics and Paralympics, because they won't be there only at the Paralympics, they're coming way before during the Olympics, just to make sure that the Games are useful to just fasten the process. And that'll be successful if in 10, 20 years, like after the Games in London, we can say there's been 1 million jobs provided for disabled people within 6 years. For disabled people, just after the Games in London, within 6 years. That's exactly the kind of thing that we could be proud of. For the rest, for the celebration, for like the organization, I'm amazingly confident, but that's not enough. There's much more behind this.
There is obviously everything about the Games, but then even during the Games, there is also the hotels, just the general transports and everything. And you mentioned something there, is that this was a reason, something that Paris needed. It's fair to say that would the Paralympics not be taking place next year, this change might not be happening right now, but perhaps this is what Paris needed. This is a golden opportunity.
Well, the Paralympic Games, the amazing thing about them is that they bring a spotlight to a particular part of the population that tends to be marginalized. And not simply in France, in every society, let's be honest. So we have a golden opportunity. This is the first time we're hosting the Paralympic Games in France, the Summer Games, and in the capital city. So inevitably, that brings the focus on persons with disability, on athletes with disability, and not just high-performance athletes, but also the everyday person with disability who might not be able to become a champion, but wants to have access to sport facilities. We're doing a lot of work with the City of Paris to make more facilities accessible, and also not just putting, if I can say it, a ramp to a venue so they can go in, but also having the appropriate infrastructure, the appropriate support so they can do sport the way they should do it. So this opportunity is gold. And of course, at the same time, it is an opportunity to make the Paralympic athletes known. When Michael started in a few years ago, his career, the coverage was very, very limited. Next year, we're going to have 300 hours of live coverage in this country. In the span of 10 years, it has exploded. These are things that would never have happened, I dare say, had it not been for the Paralympic Games in Paris.
There's a lot of points I want to come back on. You talked about, Michael, about the mindset. There's something in France that people maybe abroad don't realize. I know that when we're young and in school, the words to describe people with disabilities are used as insults. I can remember that growing up young. It probably still happens today. If you don't, how do we change? Because if you have children using words like that as an insult, that's something, you talk about mindset, that's something huge that needs to change. How do you do that?
It's not proper to France. I have some friends from all over the world, like athletes. I was talking with a good friend of mine, like an Australian player, Dylan Alcott. He's been called cripple. He's been called cripple at school since he was probably 4 years old till he was 16. And then when he became a Paralympian and Paralympic champion, he became a Paralympic champion. And that's the way it transformed. You're talking about school. To me, that's the priority, the legacy we'll have in schools. To be able to make sure we have more and more kids with disability being able to be taught in the same environment with able kids, that we don't separate them. And that's the work of the government, of course, to improve every year to make this happen. But to me, there's the access to sports. Mm-hmm. Today, there's 1.4% of the clubs, the clubs of any kind of sports, which are able to welcome disabled people to do sports. 1.4.
This says it all.
It's almost none. So that's one of the things that we're working really hard with the National Paralympic Committee about creating 3,000 before the Paralympic Games, and of course much more after, 3,000 clubs, disabled friendly. I don't like the term, but where anyone can just access, have facilities accessible, can use the sports equipment provided, and having people trained and formed to be able to teach you. If tomorrow, and that would be my dream, and that's a message I send to our new Minister of Education, Gabriel Attal, is I've been a student in French schools. I've been doing some long jump. I've been doing some swimming. I've been doing some football, some basketball, tennis table. But we don't teach those kids to become champions when they're at schools. We teach them to know the values of the sport, to do the best they can, to learn to work according to some rules that you've been taught, to try to improve. What about, as a legacy, in September 2024, or let's give them one more year because they're going to be busy, September 2025, for every kid going to school till graduation, just put in a program of sports education, disabled sports.
Which would be a great way for people to
change people's minds straight away.
Sure.
Because the job we're doing, I've been going for the last 23 years since I'm in a wheelchair in hundreds of schools to just keep trying to change people's mind and kids' mind and stuff. But if we don't want to keep doing it with adults, which is much tougher, because it's been 30, 40, 50 years, they had the bad reflex about it. If tomorrow, the disabled person, the disabled kid that we put on the side that we'll never take in the team, when you have two captains, they have to make teams. Sure. We're still in a world, and not just in France, where we don't take the girls, because first it starts there. The boys will take boys, they're friends. But okay, there's one girl left, okay, come in our team. But the disabled person is not even involved in the math. We don't even take them. But if tomorrow they're the one being the captain because we're going to play the sports where they can perform, where they can succeed, when they can achieve things. Because so far, we put them in a situation of failure most of the time. And many, many disabled kids don't even have access to sports when they are at school. Or they will be just in a very private environment where we put them on the side. That's one of the many ways to change people's mind. We have to protect them. Being a disabled kid in school in France or in probably most of the countries in the world, it's painful. I had an accident when I was 18, so I was strong enough to defend myself. But when you're 5, 10, 12 teenager, it's painful, and I mean, it can leave like some dramatic scars, like in the construction of an individual. So that's one of the many things we're working on. The Olympic and Paralympic Week, which has been created by the organization committee of Paris 2024, the impact it has in those schools, in all those thousands and thousands of places we've been working with. Most of the projects are around Paralympic and Paralympism, about the values and about what it means, and that's a way to change people's mind.
It is tough, as you say, for people who aren't disabled to understand how people can go around, so whether it's in a wheelchair or elsewhere. Let's just take a little view of what that could be like, because our reporters went to meet a man, Michael, that I'm sure you know pretty well. He took them for a wheelchair tour around Paris. Just gets a little insight of what it can be like.
It's an urban obstacle course of pavements, people and roadworks. In short, navigating Paris in a wheelchair is more often than not an Olympic challenge in itself.
In Paris, you'd better be athletic.
Luckily for him, Serge Mabelli is one of France's best wheelchair tennis players. The Paris 2024 organisers are promising a games that will be accessible to people with disabilities, but with just 1 year to go before it kicks off, it seems there's still a way to go.
It's quite clear that this is an underground station that I could have taken, but unfortunately, as you can see, there are stairs. With my wheelchair, I can't go down the steps, so I'm left with no choice but to come up with a plan B.
During the Games, most of the French capital is expected to be closed to traffic. In terms of public transport, progress is being made, but it still requires patience just to reach the future Olympic venues.
If I'd been able-bodied, it would have taken me 11 minutes. But you can see that the route was a nightmare, so it took us 40 minutes to get there. It takes a lot of planning beforehand because you have to really anticipate your journey. So in any case, we're not travelling with complete peace of mind yet.
But true accessibility isn't just a challenge for public transport.
We're expecting between 4,000 to 5,000 wheelchair users a day during the Olympic and Paralympic Games. To date, however, there are only an estimated 2,900 accessible accommodation units in the hotel stock.
Last autumn, after they raised these important questions, disability groups are now involved in the Olympic Committee's decisions.
Michael, everyday life situation for you?
Well, tougher, he's right, Serge, I know him well. It takes more time. You have to anticipate, you have to plan your trips. I totally agree about like the subway. We know that's the biggest frustration. The metro will be inaccessible almost entirely for the Paralympics. It wasn't the case in London. Where I disagree, it's about the hotels. At the moment, we have 2,900 rooms declared accessible. But again, my job is common sense. You can go in the hotels in Paris, and just by entering most of the hotel rooms, especially like in the big hotels, the one we're going to welcome so many people and delegations, just by common sense, by moving few stuff, by pushing other stuff, by just asking the authorization to be declared as a welcoming room, that'll be enough. So the accessibility for the hotels today, and I can take, maybe even if it doesn't, if it involves only me, I take anyone to talk about it, that won't be a problem. For the transports, and that's what the discussion we had today with the ministers, they have to be better, and they still have time to do it. They have to provide the right the directions to make sure everybody can go around, and they have to communicate about it. We don't expect someone to have a phone and a app, because we're going to have people coming from all over the world. So we need to give them the tools to be able to go from point A to point B, from a site to another, to their hotel, and to a club in Paris, or to a restaurant or cafe. And that's a huge challenge, the communication.
Let's just have a quick word on the sporting achievements just before we wrap up. Obviously, France has not been doing as good as it may perhaps hoped to be in the last editions. Is that important as well for the delivery of Paris 2024?
Absolutely. If the home team is not performing, then obviously the games lose something of this enthusiasm, this spectacular impact. Now we have a chef de mission for the French delegation who has a responsibility to ramp up the spirits, but we're very confident there's a huge investment being made. There's some good signs from what the teams are doing at the World Championships, and we're doing the very best we can to ensure they have the best stage to shine next year.
Okay, well, I'd absolutely love to talk about more of this. Unfortunately, it's all we have time for. Yes, please do come back. Well, thank you very much, anyway, for coming by and for your insights. Thank you to all of you for watching, and good luck, of course, for the preparations on and off the fields and pitches and everything throughout the year. We'll be following all of this on France 24, but that's all for tonight. Bye-bye for now.